So we're on KUJICHAGULIA, which means self-determination, which is really one of the concepts that grows out of international law. And you've probably heard in your years of study or watching the news about different countries around the world that have fought for their rights to self-determination. I think probably the most popular one are the Palestinians that you often hear about fighting for their right to self-determination. So there's a whole body of literature that's written on international law that says that if you are a people, if you are a distinguishable people, meaning that you are a people with a common history and a projected common future, you have the right for self-determination. So that's the international law understanding of it. And as we apply it to our Kwanzaa principles, it is to define ourselves. As you see, we have people that say that we're Moorish science, Moorish. We have people that say we're Hebrew Israelites. We have people who say that we are African Americans. Some people want to be called just American. And there are many other ways in which, our people have begun to define themselves. But to define ourselves, to name ourselves, and to create for ourselves and speak for ourselves is the typical definition given by Kwanzaa. Ashe.
Ashe, thank you so much, Dr. Shakir. And so our next two panelists are absolutely amazing. So when Lakai and I were thinking and conceptualizing this really kind of wild idea of mashing cannabis and Kwanzaa together, we were like, well, how are we gonna really embody what KUJICHAGULIA, or how can we ask questions that really bring that about, right? And so we decided to settle on policy and advocacy, understanding and navigating political structures, right? So these next two panelists are absolutely amazing, not only as human beings, but also in their resilience and their ability to learn the field and navigate that and translate their work in a way that has been transformative for people really all over the country. And so I'm going to ask Ms. Dasheeda Dawson and Ms. Dreu, and to go ahead and unmute themselves and come on and get on this here camera, and we can hop right into the conversation. I see you. Hey. Let me see. Make sure we've got this speaker view on because we want to capture. Oh, that's our girl. Hey there. How are you all today?
Good. How's everybody?
Awesome. So first, I just want to open up with, if you all can introduce yourselves, because you all are awesome. And I firmly believe in us being able to talk about ourselves and big up ourselves and let people know who we are. So please let our audience know who you are and what KUJICHAGULIA means to you.
Who wants to go first?
You can go first.
Okay, we'll start with the vet. We'll go with the vet. Go ahead, Dasheeda. You can kick us off and then we'll have you talk.
I most certainly do not feel like a vet, but I thank you so much for having this forum and continue to push the work forward. So yes, my name is Dasheeda Dawson. I'm also known as the Weed Head. I've been in the industry now for the last 6 years, largely because of my own health benefits from finding cannabis as medicine. I am a science background. I did my degree in molecular biology and then an MBA 10 years later, and then went on to work in corporate America, making things that many of us have bought, particularly around the multicultural space or the plus size space for companies like Target and Victoria's Secret. And then I transitioned into the industry out of necessity, became a consultant, and yeah, there has been a lot of self-determination happening since I moved into the industry. I've been celebrating Kwanzaa since I was a little girl. My mother was a Yoruba priestess. She's no longer with us. She's an ancestor. And I know she would be delighted to see the combination of all of the work that you guys have put to, make this conversation happen with cannabis. So this is always a special time of the year for us. And I appreciate all of the elders who are on continuing to teach us more about where this has come from and the background, especially in light of where we are right now in history. And so I think everyone can probably agree that George Floyd's incident really made it a very challenging time for us, being away from our families and also being thrusted into sort of an international stage of protest. And I think if anything else, it made me more determined to ensure that our people have that capability more broadly. And cannabis has that capacity. And so I'm excited to share more about what I've been doing and how you guys can all be involved from the policy and advocacy perspective.
Ashe, thank you so much. All right, Dreu, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you all for having me here. I'm really excited about it. My name is Dreu VanHoose. I am the owner of VanHoose Hemp Co. We are a small minority family-owned hemp farm in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I've been cultivating for going on 4 years now and down at the farm for about 3 years. We've been in the program since the pilot year in 2019. And again, I'm just excited to talk about how the industry is moving forward, kind of talk about the stigmas around marijuana versus the cannabis sativa hemp plant and the differences, and just navigating that space to make it more equitable and inclusive for us to get into something that has affected us for so long. And yeah, I'm just excited to offer any help, assistance, advice that I have through self-determination, navigating this space.
Ashe. So thank you, ladies, so much for joining us, right? Again, another power-hitting Black lady panel. I'm just gonna highlight that, right? I'm excited to be here with you, ladies, and thank you because it is the day before New Year's Eve, right? So thank all of you. Thank you to our audience for taking this time to listen in with us. And for the people who miss out on the conversation, we will be recording and editing it so that you all can hear it later. But my first question to you, ladies, is, can you provide a snapshot of the political field from a national perspective and then regionally from wherever you're coming to us from?
Would you like to take that first, Ms. Dawson?
Shout out to VanHoose Hemp, by the way. I remember the first time interacting with you guys, and I'm just always always blown away when I see that there's continued progress, and in spite of, right, the political landscape. So on a national level, we have seen federal legalization in the conversation, at least since 2017, when Cory Booker was the first senator to put forward the Marijuana Justice Act. And it was the first time that we saw something really significant, and it did mostly focus on the social justice components of cannabis, meaning we call it the war on drugs, but I like to be very direct about what that is. That's the racially biased enforcement of cannabis criminalization over the last 50 years. And this was something that I recently wrote an article in the LA Times about, was deliberate on the government's part. Nixon's aides have come forward and essentially said, hey, we knew that we couldn't make it illegal to be Black or against the war, but this was an area that was shared by both white hippies and Black communities, especially creatives, we could target, and they did, creatives and civil rights activists. And so because of the civil rights movement and the progress that was being made, cannabis, or marijuana specifically, was really made illegal. And from that point on, we've seen the numbers show from ACLU report after report that our communities, Black, Indigenous, and Latinx communities, have been disproportionately harmed, and purposely so. And what we see now, and Dr. Rachel and I talk a lot about, as you'll hear from Dr. Rachel Knox later, is that it has actually impacted every aspect or determinant of health throughout as a result. We've not seen any improvement in the unemployment rate. We've not seen any improvement in our overall abilities to be self-determined and have our own agency within our communities. And more recently with COVID, we've seen the impact of being the least healthiest group within the United States. And so all of this is connected to the way it was criminalized. And so now we are fast forward to today, where we have some legalization happening. The top 10 CEOs by pay in the country are white, and 9 of them white men. And majority of these states that have legalized have chosen not to make any type of effort to remediate the past. I find this to be problematic. And ultimately, that's why I went from the private sector to the public sector to become a cannabis regulator. And I do so in the city of Portland, Oregon, where I oversee the legal market, licensing, compliance, and equity initiatives, because it's the government's accountability to fix what it broke. And it starts with doing that with this industry. And so at the federal level, we've seen the MORE Act do a historic passage in the House last year. It's been reintroduced for 2021. Not much has changed, but there's still more that can be done. Senator Schumer, Booker, and Wyden have also brought forth their Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, which of course still needs a lot of work. It's a lot of outline. More recently, we had a Republican out of South Carolina put forth the MACE bill. They've been calling it, I know it has a real name, I'm sure, but it included nothing about equity. It was simply about just letting states do what they do. And so then that brings me to the state level, and then I'll pass the mic, which is most states are doing what they do under the guise of the fact that federally this is illegal. But even the states that have legalized have done a very slim effort in really making sure that they're remediating the past, or again, fixing some of those things that have been broken with criminalization. New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, this is a region, I'll add in Pennsylvania, this is a region that I think is going to really set a precedent on what equity-centered legalization looks like. And it's desperately needed in the South, because you have states like Georgia and Louisiana who have some sort of programs, but they are not at all talking about what they've done to continue to incarcerate, but what they've done in the past. I'll add Florida to it as well, because Florida is making money hand over foot. So at the federal and state level, we really need to be demanding not this, currently there's a union of, we have to have a legalization bill that allows us to sell it and tax it, so to speak, paired with decriminalization or expungement. I find that that's to be the issue. We really should be pushing for, people to be expunged, resentenced, and all of the arrests to stop, period. And that's something that I feel has been convoluted in this search for the right legalization bill. And so that's, to me, it's the national and state level policies that are currently shaping the conversation right now.
Ashe, and that's beautiful. I appreciate you breaking it down from that scale, right, from the national to the state, and then from state, region, and locally. So, Dreu, I know you've got some things to add from your experiences of navigating down in Alabama. So, let us and give us the tea.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just to add a little bit more to what Ms. Dawson was saying, like, you can already see where the future of marijuana is going. But the problem is, as more legalization comes federally, it's coming across the US. It's only a matter of time. The biggest thing, like she said, is expungement, decriminalization, and then also just like making it equitable for us to get into these spaces as legalization comes. So if you do know, Alabama recently just passed for medicinal marijuana use here. And they're being regulated by the Ag Department. They're still putting together, the first Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission to regulate, how it's going to break down. But they have no precedents to go off of. There's no talk about equity in the licensing, how they will divvy it up. There is no talk about expungement or decriminalization involved in the passing of this bill. There's a lot of flaws. Like, for one, the bill would allow for people who do get prescribed medical marijuana licenses to also not be approved for subsidized housing, Section 8, things like that, that could be a basis for you not to have your job, your basis for you to lose care of your child. So these are things that, because it's just now coming along, where we have the opportunity to come into our state representatives, come to the state of Alabama and let them know while they're trying to build out this program and demand the things that we want to see before they just pass it through. Alabama, the state alone, spends about 22 million a year on marijuana arrest. And that has created such a backlog for the state agency that they are unable to process murder, rapes, things of that nature. But because they cannot reallocate or see where this money needs to go, we have to advocate for that ourselves. So partnering with other Black farmers in the area, in the South, coming together to make sure that our voice is heard and the policies that we want to enact come through. For me, dealing with the ag department, there has been different levels of where they kind of have been adopting laws as they go. You know, they say one thing and they can do another thing, but they are working in such a loose space right now where there isn't a lot of regulation because it's so new. Is an opportunity for us to actually force them to listen to us, make sure they're being transparent with how these things are being regulated and what we want to see the outcome be from that. So that's kind of where I'm at with it here in Alabama. On a more national scale, just partnering with these bigger organizations because we have more of a voice together than we do individually. So I think just pushing that needle forward in that way is kind of where I've been with it.
Ashe, and so I'm a firm believer, right, in emergent strategy. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with that book by Adrienne Marie Brown. And again, shout out Dr. Shakir, because she waved it in my face a couple times. But being able to plan and be strategic in the way that we plan, and not only planning for the present, but really being, futuristic in our perception of what we want to achieve, right? So Dasheeda, I've heard you say multiple times, like, if we don't federally legalize the right way, then we don't need to federally legalize at all, right? And I think that's such a powerful statement. And I think that is really beautiful. So I'm interested to know, and we can start with Dreu and then bounce back to Dasheeda. And with this question is, what do you want the political space to look like? Like, what is your idealistic vision for the policy, cannabis in the policy space, and even from an agricultural perspective?
Yeah, I was gonna say, for me, coming from an ag side of it, accessible education around, I think education, it starts the conversation. And then from there, it gives people the access to decide individually what they want. Individually, the states can figure out what they want, but in that, we have to have regulation for expungement, for decriminalization. Started the problem first of where this all began, and then work from there to open up access and equity into the cultivation and the actual ag side of it from my standpoint. That's what I see.
I am looking at this definitely from a broader standpoint, and I am thinking about the ways the ecosystem has to be shaped in order for this to be a success. And the ecosystem, when we talk about cannabis, and I did forget to add this, is that we're also including hemp. And the history of hemp, a lot of people do not recognize or understand, is that slaves grew hemp, and many of our HBCUs are currently on land that at one point was really the location of the growth of the cash crop for America. We've been in many ways told a lot of lies, particularly we focus a lot on cotton. That's really cotton doing its own promo. But if you go back beyond Nixon, Anslinger was in bed with DuPont and Hearst, and that was the plastic and paper tycoons. And cotton being part of that supply chain, they did everything that they could to also eliminate hemp from the supply chain. And so while making marijuana the illegal face of it, they did all these other things to impose taxes on hemp so that eventually it faded to the background in terms of industry and all of the other like innovations that we've seen now start to come back in our current. So my number one thing I would do is I would remove this man-made bifurcation of hemp marijuana. It's all the same genus. And there are so many things that hemp can do that also marijuana can do. We're talking about medicinal products and supplements. They both can make cannabinoid-based products, right? And in fact, based on the man-made designation of the 0.3%, and this idea that marijuana has to be really high THC, what we've done is really alter our genetics, right? In that we're breeding for this 0.3% and less. And then on the marijuana side, we're breeding for more than 10%. And there is this between 0.3% and 10% genetics that we never get to see and probably represent a large percentage of the future of cannabis medicine and supplements that we're just not getting to. We don't know what will happen with the rest of the cannabinoids in those genetics either. And I feel like we are at a disadvantage as a result. So the dream is to free the plant from this like man-made bifurcation and you know, forcing everyone down these two regulatory paths. But then I go back to the people, and Dreu called this out. We don't have enough focus on the people. We've been focused, they got a lot of people focused on the plant, and agriculture is starting to come around, and USDA, You got a lot of people focused on the money aspect, but not enough focus on the people. And so when we talk about the people, we're not just talking about how to deal with the criminalization aspect, but the collateral damages of the criminalization aspect. So if you were part of a family unit where your main breadwinner was removed as a result of incarceration, what does that look like for that family? And then what does that look like for the community? So Dr. Rachel and I, with the Cannabis Health Equity Movement, we've been really focused on how we use cannabis as a real strategic tool to help us build back the equity that we've now been denied over the last 50 to 100 years that are in our community. That's, you know, our economic equity, environmental, because this is a plant that heals the soil and can really change the way we do ag, but also our human equity. And so, yeah, my vision is that we are starting to be very holistic about the plant and its benefits, not just from, oh, I smoke weed or I have a medicinal aspect, but the whole ecosystem. How can it improve our soil? How can it improve our affordable housing? How does it impact our community?
Your hair looks lovely.
Thank you. I see you.
Oh. I'll take the compliment, even though I know she's not going to say anything else.
I love my people. Okay, we roll with the punches, but I absolutely I love that. I love what you touched on. Oh, my brain she just threw me off with the hair. Okay, wait, I'm trying to bring my thought back. Bring it back. Repeat the last thing you said, Dasheeda. Run it back for me one more time.
Yes, the last thing I said was really utilizing cannabis as a tool towards total health equity for our communities, and not just one specific community, all communities, but really prioritizing the ones that have been damaged from the criminalization aspect and giving back. I mean, if you imagine the value that we as slaves, our ancestors as slaves gave to this country by just being able to manipulate this plant. They called it the N-word crop, right? Like it was that clear that only slaves dealt with it. White folks did not want to deal with the plant because it was too dirty, all sorts of other things that we see in the record books. And we need, you know, you can use the term reparations, but we really need restitution for what we've been, you know, denied based on what we provided to the industry thus far.
I mean, I that's what I was going to say is like, you know, Andrew, I'm definitely interested in your perspective on this as well, because I mean, you're outside, right? And, you know, right. We just had Christmas, right? I'm in Chicago. It was not a white Christmas, bro. It was no snow. It was almost like 60 degrees on Christmas. So you touched on the element of being able to engage like that climate change is real. You know what I'm saying? And hemp is a very real hemp, not even hemp. I want to stop saying that. I'm trying to be less political in my language, but everything is political, you know, whatever. But cannabis is a real solution for climate change, right? And so, Dreu, can you touch on how that manifests for you when you're outside every single day, and how does that translate for you as a black woman, as a farmer? A lot of, you know, intersectional opportunities for oppression that exist here, just being very real about it. So, you know, not only, you know, with the climate policy, you know, we just had COP26 where the entire United Nations just gathered to have a conversation about climate. So how do you feel these things manifesting for you?
Definitely, like, well, the land that I'm on down in Alabama is ancestral land. It was inherited to me through my grandfathers. My family is a part of the city of Tuscaloosa, and it's very important to me. I don't know if hemp, cannabis, sativa will change the world, but I think it's the only thing that can. As far as with climate change and the way things are going, we do a lot of studies to cultivate the land, but also make sure that we're giving back as much as we're taking out of it. So we try to be sustainable, organic in our practices. And with that, you know, we look for more opportunities. So not only as Dasheeda talked on that range from that 0.3 to 10% THC of that plant we're not talking about, there's also the area of textiles that you can put into hemp. They're building hempcrete, roads, houses, bedding, others that talked on it before too, but there's an endless amount of possibilities for this plant, not only the medicinal uses, but the industries that it can impact and help. I've seen studies of people building it, planting next to wastelands to pull out the toxins out of the air. It emits 3 times the amount of oxygen as any tree. There's so many different things that this plant can do. So we are trying to explore and navigate through that, not only in the hemp plant, because then also touching back onto the land, what is around us. In Alabama, on my land specifically, we do a lot of foraging on the land. So we find that there's a lot of indigenous plants that have literally just stopped growing for no reason whatsoever. So we're trying to figure that out, bringing back the ecosystem of the bees, because they are no longer the natural plants that used to be there. We're trying to figure out how to cultivate new plants that the bees then adapt to, and we'll come back the native bees, not people building honeybee farms and things like that. And going out and foraging will allow us to look at some of plants that have been looked over as maybe poisonous or not indigenous to the area, but you can break it down and build into tinctures to make them medicinal, and they have very powerful properties. So just connecting with the land, connecting with my ancestors, knowing that we are not owners of the land, but the land, you know, is for everybody. So just holding that and making sure that we are really tapping into all the possibilities of the plant. With the passing of the farm bill, I feel like we kind of almost jumped the gun. Everyone went so hard on CBD, CBD, CBD. There's all of these cannabinoids and more that are still being discovered in the plant that have so many uses. The whole plant, the totality of the plant is what is going to provide the biggest benefits. Like I said, not just medicinal, but down to the stalk. We're doing research on the roots having more antioxidant properties that could be more beneficial than the bud themselves. So just trying to think about different ways how we can cultivate the land, cultivate life, and just cultivate love in what we're doing from where I've come from to where we're going is important.
Ashe, I'm okay. It's getting thick and thick and thick. It's getting more and more real. And I see that we were also just joined by the beautiful Miss Jasmine of Green Essence down in Florida. And so, Dasheeda, you touched on Florida. Actually, you kind of emphasized, you sprinkled it on real, real sexy, like at the end. So, Jasmine, if you don't mind, just hopping in, introducing yourself, and letting us know about the political structures that you've had to navigate down in Florida, and what that has been like for you. Give you some time to unmute.
Oh.
There we go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I realized I was muted. Yeah, Florida has been an incredible challenge, down to the inception of how the regulatory environment was formed here. It was definitely made to, the best word I could just discriminate against us because, you had to have a nursery license for over 30 years at a farm, and just the regulatory environment was extremely complicated here. And so with that came a lot of litigious activity. So the first 5 licenses were issued through the traditional application process, but everyone who didn't get a license, almost everyone who didn't get a license who applied, sued the state. So the new application period just has never opened. They made an announcement a month ago for no 19 license will be coming out in June of 2022, but it's extremely expensive. And the one license that they did grant for any Black applicants or Black farmers, just to put in perspective, when the initial license came out, it was about $62,000 for the application. The Black farmers license is double that. It's almost triple, almost $180,000 just for the application fee, for the one Black designated license. And so it's been very complicated. It's been challenging. It's been expensive, but not impossible. And so our group has been on the outskirts, waiting for the application period. But last year we pivoted to raise capital to get into the market and purchase one of the original license. And, obviously capital is a whole nother challenge. Capital is a whole nother challenge. But in terms of the regulatory scheme, I think Florida probably has one of the most rigorous processes involved, which is why it's kind of been like this golden apple that we really can't get our hands on, which is why there is no Black representation in the state. I mean, we did get our first minority, which is cookies, in September of last year. So at least, it's been 5 years, and on the end of the 5th year, we got the first minority, which is very disappointing. And so I would just say, just from my experience, I'm happy that we got the right legal team, right lobbyists, so that we can stay informed. But just being informed is not enough to really change what's happening on the ground for us. It's just like getting messages. We're not, what I would love to see, and I think the only way this can happen is if we have the capital and the money to really effectuate change and make a difference. Because other than that, we're kind of just bystanders here.
And I want to say I'm really appreciative of you coming and sharing your space and sharing your story around the work that you all are really doing and the challenges that are very real for you all down in Florida. And you really kind of answered a lot of the questions that we had earlier, but I wanted to ask, like, this panel is about KUJICHAGULIA. It's about self-determination, right? And you have obviously got that to be able to continue to matriculate. So, like, what does KUJICHAGULIA, what does self-determination mean for you? What does it look like for you? And then I see, Dasheeda, you also unmuted yourself, so I'll let you say what you were going to say after she answers. Thank you.
The only thing, and I've definitely realized this along the process, I've been at this for almost 5 years since the initial licenses were issued. And my mentor actually exposed me to the process. He was in government relations, so he kind of set the blueprint, said, this is who we need on the nursery. We found a Black farmer over 30 years. We met all of the criteria, and like I said, the application period was just announced. You can imagine 5 years ago thinking, oh, okay, in a couple months, next couple months. And so in this whole process, especially as I have about 40 team members behind me, and knowing what we're trying to do, it's all self-determination. Like, if we're really going to have an impact in this industry, we can't wait on anyone else. No one's going to give it to us. No one's going to change the rules for us. And even if they do give us a little bit of space, that's definitely not nearly as much as we need right now. And so this whole process has really challenged me to stay focused, to stay on the path. I do feel like, you know, obviously Florida being the most complicated state to get into right now, that this was, it feels like a calling, because it's been so many challenges and so many reasons to say, forget it, you know, like, this is almost impossible. But I know when we have Florida, this will change a lot of things for us, because we will have the capital. You know, that one of the operation that we're acquiring, it's like the 6th largest in the state. And so just to put it in perspective, True Leaf, which is number 1 in the state, they did $1 billion. They did $1 billion this year, right? Could you imagine with doing $1 billion in sales, how that can just change the trajectory of cannabis in general for Black people? Because we'll have the money to lobby. We'll have the money to change the laws. We'll have the money to hire attorneys to really get people out of jail for these crimes. And this whole process is, especially, you know, given that cannabis is still kind of new in terms of the education, like Dreu was saying, and the research. Our medical director, they're already doing clinical trials with cannabis as far as diabetes, sickle cell, and, you know, chronic pain and all those good things. And it's just one of those things where I feel every day more and more attached and determined to make this happen. So that's what self-determination means, particularly for this cannabis industry for me. It means to keep going, to persevere, to never give up. Don't stop, even if the system is built against you. Don't stop. And I'm sorry, I get emotional because it's just so sad how many barriers are placed in front of us when we just want to effectuate change. So yeah, I'm not stopping. You know, I love the message today. I'm not stopping at all.
You just gave us a whole Kwanzaa word, okay? Dasheeda, what was you gonna say? Please go.
No, first, I love that. Today I'm wearing a special shirt and it says, "It's that land of the free part that gives me pause," because it does. We've never seen equity really happen in America because it's never been the intention. And one thing I will say about Florida is we also, Florida is an example of it, but as a regulator, I've been able to shed a little bit of the respectability politics that oftentimes Black and brown folks come into our leadership spaces with, mainly because, not for nothing, even though I love my job, I know I'll be okay without this job. And so I'm focused on the change that it can affect. I'll say it right out the gate is that undoing corruption is really expensive. And that's what Florida is dealing with. Florida currently is one of the most, if not the most corrupt market in the country. And we are seeing the story unfold, and yet and still that is not changing the conversation on the ground, because I do think of all of the Black and brown folks that I've had the pleasure of working with, the Floridians are the most disenfranchised and not even realizing just how disenfranchised they are. I'll give a perfect example. One of my first campaigns that I worked on with M for MM out the gate was when it was legalizing. We made a real push for the medical cards. For every, I think, card, $5 goes to FAMU, which is a HBCU, not realizing that behind closed doors, while they did give us that, and that is a big deal, they also added things into the law that prevents FAMU from doing any medical research on medical cannabis. So basically, again, preventing access to what is really the long money as it pertains to cannabis legalization. Yes, you can get part of the cards, maybe that will help influence the communities that are Black and brown to go get their medical card, and certainly the school has been doing that, but you don't get to benefit from the research. You don't get to actually own that, patent that. That is the long money. That's the disenfranchisement. And honestly, I would be remiss to say that the leaders didn't really understand that that was a real issue. On the hemp side, there's a struggle there as well. They are basically contracting with predominantly white companies to do the work, do the research, and hope that they get something on the back end. This is people bringing the fish, but you're not learning how to fish yourself. So if we're going to be self-determined, we've got to stop taking what we can get and the respectability politics with what we can get. And I mean, I hate to do it, but I'm from Brooklyn and I pretty much approach everything with a Brooklyn attitude, which is very Biggie style, busting the door with a 4-4. And that's where we really got to be at this point. And
Absolutely.
I, especially hearing the commentary about and how much emotion is behind it, we need to bring everyone together around the same concepts. And so M4MM is where I was. I love and still support M4MM. Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition is the future because I'm a regulator. We now have enough of us to be able to come together, and we're able to come on the record to testify, provide memos to help move the political part of it.
No, absolutely. I mean, in Florida, it's just disrespectful to say the least. True Leaf, the company I referenced, the $1 billion company, first mover, is an understatement. I mean, the husband of the CEO is on record, on tape, on audio, saying we had no idea. We didn't know anything about cannabis, but we knew this license was worth something. And we manipulated the system in a way to change the rules so that we can get the license. It's on audio. And although he was indicted on 5 out of 9 counts, he only has served 3 years, which means that he barely would have to serve 3 years. He'd probably be out at 6 months. And it all went under the record, down to the point where how True Leaf is so intricately involved.
Oh, your microphone is a little clouded on. We couldn't really hear you. Oh wait, you're on mute. Unmute.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, sorry about that. No, I was saying how True Leaf, manipulated the system as just recently. We had a auction for a piece of paper license, the harvest license, and Planet 13 out of Vegas bought that license for $55 million. We also were selected for it, but we decided not to go for it because we wanted to acquire an operation that was existing. And a week after that deal was effectuated, they announced the new 19 license that would be coming out. So you can imagine, would you wait 6 months to get a piece of paper, or would you pay $55 million for it? That's how tight of a hold True Leaf has on our leadership. They were able to get their deal signed, sealed, delivered, and then make the announcement that 19 licenses would be available in June. Mind you, that deal happened in November. And so it's just disrespectful at this point. But I'm happy to say, now that we have capital, we have a capital partner, and this partner is also creating $1 billion fund for Black people in the cannabis space. When we get involved, it as you say with the Biggie expression, it's going down. So, I'm happy to be in Florida. I'm happy to be on this mission. I'm happy with the team that we have and what we're trying to do. Patience has been an incredible virtue, to say the least. But I'm excited for the possibility of what we're all trying to do here.
Ashe, thank you. Y'all are amazing. Like, we done been brought to tears right now. I'm like, I was not expecting this, but this is what happens. You feel me? When you come and you're honest and you're authentic in the work that you're doing. And I think that's what makes the cannabis industry so beautiful. Is like, Dasheeda, I remember like the first time I heard you speak or something, it was like, man, if you're in this for the money, G, you might want to get out, because this is not the space to just come in, make all your money. Like, it is ancestral work. It is truly ancestral work. And Dreu, that's one of the things I really love that you and Faye like totally embody, as being the Black lady farmers that you are, like, and that is like my passion. It is my love, and to see the way that you all bring these two cultures together and are so efficient in identifying the discrimination. Like, it is so plainly put. Dasheeda, the way that you spit these facts, and and like, I think that's part of self-determination as well, is not only understanding yourself and having self-awareness of who you are and what you need, but also your surroundings and the reality that you're facing and what you really have to go through every single day in order to be yourself, in order to show up, and in order to do this work. So there was a question that popped up in the chat, and I want to also leave space for you all to give your shameless plugs, let people know where they can find you and things like that. But Kenneth asked, how will passage of Safe Banking Act affect your business positively and negatively? That will allow national banks to get more involved, but also allow big tobacco and beverage companies to get more involved as well. So I don't know if you all have some broad comments that you want to make in reference to that.
I have all the comments at this point. I've been working on it for the last 7 to 8 weeks, really trying to reclaim or readjust the way we're talking about SAFE. Unfortunately, I think right now we're in the midst of what is a bait and switch. I talk about this weekly now on my Flower to the People segment on Sirius, channel 126, so that's a little plug, but this is where we're going to get the work done. We got to constantly be talking and preparing ourselves like soldiers. Well, Safe Banking Act is a bill for banks. It is not a bill for people. It is a bill to help banks feel more comfortable dealing with the cannabis space without necessarily feeling like they're going to get some of the penalties that are associated with dealing with something that is federally illegal. It does nothing in the way of making banking equitable. And unfortunately, banking, whether you are in cannabis or not, is highly inequitable. It currently is the case that Black and Latino owned businesses are way less likely to be approved for commercial loans. So when I do the analysis, what I look at is what would we get if we just make this bill pass as is. And what we get is banks being able to do what they already do with the cannabis companies that they choose. And since cannabis, like porno, is still one of those taboo industries, they have the ability to say, no, we don't want to work with that company, or we do. And since they already do so with this racially biased lens, I can't imagine, I think it's a reach to believe that they are going to change their mind on how they work with Black and brown cannabis companies. But here are some of the benefits if it does pass. I think it's important to note the difference. If you're a small operator, at best, you may be able to get back or save about $120,000 in banking fees as a result of the transactional fees that get charged, or these incremental fees that they can tack on as risk aversion, I guess, costs, if you will. If you're a big company, though, so you probably already have banking and you are 8-figure commercial loans. So while we're getting small Black and brown companies in the industry may be getting $120,000 at most that they get to save, big predominantly white companies like the ones we've been talking about already now get to not just take their private equity money, but they also get to qualify for 8-figure multi-million-dollar commercial loans. To me, all we're doing is helping Goliath get bigger. And yes, we also now invite big pharma, big CPG, big retail like Amazon into the space to be more active. Amazon just this last year has come out to support the MORE Act and publicly. And when they're doing it publicly, trust that means they have about 3 to 5 years privately that they've been doing research on how they're going to transition into the space. Having SAFE means that they also have that ability to be formulating these big companies, and they already have accounts, they already have trusts, they have years of loans, and so they would qualify as well quite nicely while we still struggle. So Safe Banking Act needs a relook, and we have that opportunity. That's the last thing I'll say. It can be amended, and we have the Democratic support to push that. We just can't keep taking what we can get, and this is exactly that issue. I'm always open to answer more questions about SAFE because I do think that's one of the first areas where we do have some nuances. I operate where I oversee an industry where a lot of people are experiencing robberies and a lot of people are experiencing these high fees. And what I did was at the local level, I took the cannabis tax revenue and created an emergency relief fund that is prioritized by historically excluded groups. And that's what the state and local level can do. So SAFE doesn't have to be the solve all. State and local politics can help create some emergency relief for cannabis companies as well.
Ashe. So we are about to have to start wrapping up, and I want to give you all room to, again, just kind of recap again. So this panel, we still got some people that are popping in. This panel has been about KUJICHAGULIA. It's been about self-determination. It's been about policy and advocacy and understanding how to navigate the political framework and the red tape and all of these structures that have been, quite honestly, intentionally put in our path to starve us out and to see how long we can really hold out and be self-determined in this field, right? And we've been accompanied by these three beautiful women who have, in all of their different ways and in all of their different capacities, right, have been doing that. So I guess in closing remark, ladies, definitely again, and you can put your information on where people can find you in the chat, and we have a document where we're collecting everything. And I had a question I didn't get to, and I really want to ask, and I think that we can close with this, right? What needs to happen for us to close these gaps, right? How can we get involved? How can we mobilize? And how can we ultimately prepare the Southeast as a region, right? Because it's about, the first session was on community. So we already know we need community, right? Now we need our community to be self-determined, but self-determined towards what? So if you ladies could give us maybe some action items or things that you think we should be in tune with, ways that we can keep up with you, just what should we be doing right now? And we could let's start with Dreu, and then we'll go to Miss Jasmine, and we'll close with you, Dasheeda.
Okay, yeah, I think listening, learning, planning, but I think the biggest thing with Dasheeda was saying, and Jasmine, like she was talking about the Brooklyner, like you have to demand it. No one's going to give it to you. That's like where the self-determination comes in. No one's going to, we know you can see and you can do all the research and see like as plainly as day, like she was saying, the man's been on recording, like these things are here for us. It's in our face. We know it. Now, what are we going to do about it? So getting together, following the groups, the work that Dasheeda is doing, the work that Jasmine's doing, the work that we're doing in Alabama, Tuskegee, other universities, just collectively, how can we come together to be stronger than just that one voice? You know what I mean? To actually push it forward. We are demanding to be heard. We are demanding to be seen. We are demanding for these things to happen this way, not the way that it's being served to us or the way that you're trying to give it to us, the way that it needs to be, the way that we demand it to be. So that would be my statement on self-determination. If anyone wants to follow me, we're at VanHoose Hemp Co, www.VanHoose Hemp Co. I'll put it in the chat. And thank you for having me on this panel. This has been very insightful and just amazing to be here and share and learn and just commune with y'all.
My opinion on the safe banking and just overall with the self-determination, I follow with what Dreu said. It's our time. We need to be unapologetic about it. And, the biggest thing about this Banking Act, really the 280E and the taxation, the freedom that it allow us to treat this like an actual legitimate business and do the proper write-off so that our bottom lines can increase. And, to really effectuate change, it's going to take some incredible pocket power, right? We need some real big pockets so that we can pay to play. And that's really all of this. We can advocate, we can scream to the highest mountain, but without the dollars, it don't make sense. And we're here to just break in and get this money and really create the change that we need to see amongst us. And a big part of that is the banking process and being able, like I say, to increase the bottom line so we can take that capital and push it around into other places that need be, especially on the lobbying side, so that we can really be at the table and create these rules so that they benefit us. Because the people, even having minorities at the table working through these rules, without having minorities with some real capital, you can't really understand the full, the totality of how we can really make a change here. It's just almost like, give us the bread, give us the crumbs, we're begging for things here, and that can't happen. So I'm all for, like we all are, for changing the banking environment, changing the regulatory environment, changing the federal environment. But we have to be prepared. And so that's all I would say.
Well, I think that I would piggyback just to say we've got to get prepared. That means learning the cannabis science as well as understanding policy and, not just thinking about self, right? Part of Kwanzaa is about how we're preparing as a community. And so I do think that as you look at a landscape politically and determine what would be okay for your business, the next thing is think about your consumers, which is actually the community, and how it would impact the community. If it's not good for your consumers, it's not good for your business. Whether you're at the farming level or whether you have already done the production and you're now at the retail level. And so that's something you got to constantly think about. And you can also follow me on @Dasheeda Dawson, Instagram and Twitter. And then theweedhead.com is my personal website that you can also follow along with this journey.